So if we reject the law, it's the same as rejecting the Son. And rejection of the Son is the same as rejection of the Father. We are on the very verge of the final conflict, and the world needs to be warned. This movement is not to form separate congregations. This movement is to infuse all. So the world is seeing revolt. Well, who's engineering these events? It's not just happening in the Arab world, it's happening in Europe. It's going to come here. People are fed up with everything that's going on in this world. And this is the breach that needs to be repaired in the time that we live in. We can study prophecies, we can know what's happening in the world, we can see all of these things. If we don't start right here with Jesus, we've gone nowhere. But we want to continue with our discussion and our study on Revelation and on Daniel and the times that we are living in. And particularly we are looking at Daniel chapter 11. And we have done the study in the previous lectures that we have been through. So now let's have a look at some of the finer points and the fulfillment as they are unfolding in the world today. Reaping the whirlwind. Psalm 77 verse 18, the voice of your thunder was in the whirlwind. The lightnings lit up the world, the earth trembled and shook. This is a climactic occurrence. We read in the previous lectures in Daniel 11:40, and at the time of the end shall the king of the south push at him, and the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind, with chariots and with horsemen and with many ships. And we saw that this had to do probably with economic and military capacity. And then we looked at the tidings out of the east and out of the north that shall trouble him. Therefore he shall go forth with great fury to destroy and utterly to make away many. The devil doesn't want anyone to be saved. He doesn't want anyone to hear the saving truths of the three angels' messages. And he shall plant the tabernacles of his palace between the seas in the glorious holy mountain. He will try to infiltrate his mindset even within God's people, just as Baal worship was introduced into God's people at the time of Balak and Balaam. Yet he shall come to his end, and none shall help him. If it weren't for that verse, we could despair. His plans will finally come to an end, and he will not win the battle. Here's our Egyptian relief of Egyptian battle. But the Egyptians pursued after them all the horses and the chariots of Pharaoh and his horsemen and his army, and overtook them encamping by the sea besides Ahirot before Baal-zephon. So obviously this is military might, because this was the army, the military of the Egyptians that pursued the Israelites. So the king of the north will have at his disposal military power. He is a religious entity, but he controls certain military powers. Verse 42 says, he shall stretch forth his hand also upon the countries, and the land of Egypt shall not escape. He shall have power over the treasures of gold and of silver, and over all the precious things of Egypt, and the Libyans and the Ethiopians shall be at his steps. And we discussed these verses. They will follow at his heels, but he will control the world's economy. That's what the verse says. This is a typical Phoenician ship, and the Bible makes it quite clear that this is associated with economic might and economic power. 2 Chronicles 9:21, for the king's ships went to Tarshish with the servants of Huram. Every 3 years once came the ships of Tarshish, bringing gold and silver and ivory and apes and peacocks. Here you have economic power. Psalms 107 verse 23, they that go to the sea in ships, that do business in great waters. Proverbs 31 verse 14, she is like the merchant's ships. She brings her food from afar. So she controls every single aspect. Psalms 48 verse 7, thou breakest the ships of Tarshish with an east wind. They will come to an end. They will be destroyed. This economic power, whereby she will implement her mark of the beast, will come to an end. We looked last time in our previous lectures at the prince and the king of Tyre. Now we will look at it from the aspects of the economy. Here is a typical relief from that period. From the Phoenicians, Isaiah 23 verse 1, the burden of Tyre, howl ye ships of Tarshish, for it is laid waste, so that there is no house, no entering in from the land of Kittim. It is revealed to them. Now here are the vestiges of Tyre. We know the history, that it was overthrown, and that today it lies in the midst of the sea, fulfilling an ancient prophecy and guaranteeing that God's word is true. There lie the remnants of the ancient city of Tyre, and the prophets had said, he will sweep even the rocks, and even her dust will be thrown into the sea, fulfilled by Alexander the Great when he conquered that island nation that had moved from the mainland, left that ancient ruin there, and established that island city. And he built a causeway, fulfilling the prophecy, throwing the old Tyre into the sea. Isaiah 17 verse 13, the nations shall rush like the rushing of many waters, but God shall rebuke them, and they shall flee far off, and shall be chased as the chaff of the mountains before the wind, and like a rolling thing before the whirlwind. They will reap the whirlwind, but the whirlwind will be in God's hands. And we are just caught between the powers. This battle is for the mind. Isaiah 60 verse 9, surely the isles shall wait for me, and the ships of Tarshish first, to bring thy sons from afar, their silver and their gold with them, unto the name of the Lord thy God, and to the Holy One of Israel, because he has glorified thee. And the sons of the stranger shall build up thy walls, and their kings shall minister unto thee. For in my wrath I smote thee, but in my favor I've had mercy on thee. The tables will be turned. The economic powers will revert back to God. For behold, the Lord will come with fire, and with his chariots like a whirlwind, to render his anger with fury, and his rebuke with flames of fire. This is a conflict, but it is God that is battling, and people are looking for a different battle. They're looking for literal battle. And say unto Tyrus, O thou that art situate at the entry of the sea, which art a merchant of the people for many isles. Thus says the Lord God, O Tyrus, thou hast said, I am perfect, I am of perfect beauty. Thy borders are in the midst of the seas, thy builders have perfected thy beauty. They've set up the system. They have carefully planned the economic systems of the world. They have made all thy ships boards of fir trees of Senna. They have taken cedars from Lebanon to make masts for thee. Of the oaks of Bashan they have made thine oars. The company of the Usharites have made thy benches of ivory brought out of the isles of Kittim. They have a universal franchise. Fine linen with broidered work from Egypt was that which thou speakest forth to be thy sail. Blue and purple from the isles of Elishash was that which covered thee. The inhabitants of Sidon and Arpad were thy mariners. Thy wise men, O Tyrus, that were in thee were thy pilots. They control the entire world. The ancients of Gebal and the wise men thereof were in thy caulkers. All the ships of the sea with their mariners were in thee to occupy thy what? Merchandise. Persia, Lud, Phut were in thine army. So what does he control? He controls all these power elements of man. Thy men of war, they hang the shields and helmet in thee. They set forth thy comeliness. The ships of Tarshish did sing of thee in thy market. And thou was replenished and made very glorious in the midst of the seas. So the type controlled military and merchandise. Thy rowers have brought thee into great waters. The east wind has broken thee in the midst of the sea. Thy riches and thy fares, thy merchandise, thy mariners, pilots, caulkers, occupiers, etc., etc. All thy company which was in the midst of thee shall fall in the midst of the sea in the day of thy ruin. That happened to the type, it'll happen to the antitype. Ezekiel says that they shall make themselves utterly bald for thee. And their wailing they shall take up a lamentation of thee and lament, saying, what city is like Tyrus that destroyed in the midst of the sea? Will there be another lament at the end of time for another city, which the Bible calls Babylon? Yes, there'll be another lament. So there are parallels. When thy wares went forth out of the seas, thou fillest many people, that didst enrich the kings of the earth. So the typology tells us that this power worked with the kings of the world, and money played a major role. And with the multitudes of thy riches and thy merchandise, and the time then thou shalt be broken by the seas and the depth of the waters, thy merchandise and all thy company in the midst of thee shall fall. So Tyre, the literal one, fell. The merchants amongst the people shall he set thee. Thou shalt be a terror, and never shalt thou be any more. That is the typology we are dealing with. Let's jump to the book of Revelation, where we find the final prophecy in its fulfillment regarding Babylon. And after these things I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lighted with his glory. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, is become a habitation of devil, and a hole of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. The loud cry of the third angel's message. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of her, my people, that you be not partakers of her sins, and that you receive not of her plagues, for her sins have reached unto heaven, and God has remembered her iniquities. I believe we are in the drops of the loud cry. And soon it will swell, once a shaking has taken place amongst God's people, and the shaking will be brought about by persecution. Verse 9 says, the kings of the earth who have committed fornication and lived deliciously with her. So the kings of the world are at her heel and live deliciously. They shall bewail her and lament for her when they shall see the smoke of her burning. Verse 11 says, the merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her, for no man buyeth their merchandise anymore. Is it the same as we had with the king of Tyre? The parallels are absolute, the type and the antitype. Verse 15, the merchants of these things which were made rich by her. So according to the Bible, who controls the economy? According to the Bible. Babylon. And who is the power of Babylon? The beast. Because the Bible says everybody must bow down to the beast. It's Roman Catholicism. But that's just the church. Then how does she control it? There must be some means whereby she controls us, because this is what the Bible says. Shall stand afar off for the fear of her torment, weeping and wailing, for in 1 hour so great riches is come to naught. I'm so fascinated that in this presidential election in the United States, there are presidential candidates that have the guts to say, I really want to see the gold in Fort Knox. Is it really still there? I don't believe it. Who has the riches? Where are the riches? Where are the diamonds that come out of Africa? Where are the tons of gold that come out of there? Why did Kennedy have to resort to a silver standard? Didn't he have any gold to back up his currency? Just a couple of questions. The events connected with the close of probation and the work of preparation for the time of trouble are clearly presented. But multitudes have no more understanding of these important truths than if they had never been revealed. Satan's done a great job. Satan watches to catch away every impression that would make them wise unto salvation, and the time of trouble will find them unready. As we near the close of this world's history, the prophecies relating to the last days especially demand our study. The last book of the New Testament scriptures is full of truth that we need to understand. The solemn messages that have been given in their order and the revelation are to occupy the first place in the minds of God's people. We're playing silly games. The world is going to pot and we are playing silly games. There are two allies, says the Bible. The beast and its image. And they will force the world into accepting the moral standards of the first beast, so that the first beast receives worship which belongs to God and to Him alone. That's what the Bible teaches. Revelation 13:1, and I stood upon the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon this horn 10 crowns, and upon his head the name of blasphemy. And I want to repeat Wesley's comment for the purpose of this lecture, so that people may know, who might be watching this one without having seen the previous ones, what was the mindset of the reformers. This beast is the Romish papacy, says Wesley in his notes. As it came to a point 600 years since, stands now and will for some time longer, to this and no other power on earth, agrees the whole text. That's what they said. And every part of it in every point, as we may see with the utmost evidence from the propositions following, this beast is a spiritually secular power opposite to the kingdom of Christ. A power not merely spiritual or ecclesiastical, not merely secular or political, but a mixture of both. The beast has a strict connection with the city of Rome. This clearly appears from the 17th chapter. The beast is now existing. It is not past. I might just add there, it's not future. For Rome is now existing, and it is not till after the destruction of Rome that the beast is thrown into the lake. Therefore, whatever he is now existing. The beast is the Romish papacy. This manifestly follows from the third and fourth proposition. The beast has a strict connection with the city of Rome, and the beast is now existing. Therefore, either there's some other power more strictly connected with that city, or the Pope is the beast. That's Wesley. I think he puts it well enough. We don't have to add anything to that. And the two shall be images. The one will be an image of the other. The beast out of the earth that had the lamb-like principles, the United States of America, will create an image to the beast. That means it will create a system that is an image of that of the papacy. The papacy was a religio-political system, so the image will be a religio-political system. But it will honor the first beast by implementing the morality of the first beast, therefore giving it homage which belongs to God. I find this fascinating. Somebody told me how to pronounce it. I got it wrong last time because I will probably get it wrong now again. Yahweh America. Anyway, you can laugh later. An independent news magazine for Italian Americans and Italophiles. June 2011. Sister city agreement signed between Washington, D.C. and Roma, Italy. Italian-American Joe Grano witnesses a dream come true many years ago. Washington lawyer Joe Grano, after returning to Washington from a trip to Rome, Italy, realized that the two cities shared more than just their status as capital cities. Joe saw that the arts and architecture of the two cities were similar. Of course, but he also noted that perhaps those similarities were not accidental, but deliberate. Isn't that fascinating? I just read the most fascinating book on the Masonic and occult structure of the city of Washington. I don't want to go into that detail. I've spoken about it in previous lectures. It is fascinating how the occult symbolism has been built into the architecture of that city, and it's based on that of Rome. Is this coincidental? If we look at the Vatican and we look at the Capitol with its goddess on the top. As Joe explained to this magazine, the American founding fathers chose a republic as their preferred form of government after having studied extensively the constitution of the Roman Republic. Once it was decided to create a new city for the seat of government, it was only natural that they chose Roman architecture for their main public buildings. This was a deliberate decision of Thomas Jefferson and George Washington, and they were Masons. It is certainly not accidental that the three buildings that represent the legislative, executive, and judicial branches, the Capitol, the White House, and the Supreme Court buildings, are ultimately derived from Roman models. It's certainly not coincidental that that obelisk that stands before the White House should be 5 feet high, and the angle 66 degrees and 6 minutes, 6 at the top. Isn't this fascinating? The sister cities agreement signed on Tuesday is the first step to what many in Washington hope will be a strengthened relationship between the two capitals and the beginning of a new project and ventures of mutual interest. It's so fascinating. To mark the occasion, the famed Capitoline Venus. Now, just look at how history fits together. One of the best preserved sculptures to survive from Roman antiquity will be an exhibit at the West Building, Rotunda, at the National Gallery of Art, where it will remain until September 5. The Capitoline Venus, a masterpiece measuring more than 6 feet in height, has only left Rome on only one other occasion, when Napoleon seized it in 1797. And Napoleon is the one who gives this new thought system, this new secular mindset, this new form of government to the United States of America. And now the two cities, Rome and Washington, are sister cities. This is the government press. Important Roman statue leaves Rome, the Capitoline Venus. Presentation of sculpture is the first act of the new sister city relationship. Mayor of Rome to announce the dream of the Rome project. Well, there's this goddess on the top of the Capitol. Is there a message they are sending to the world? The U.S. Department of State, this is their official one, says remarks at the sister city agreement between Washington, D.C. and Rome. We don't have to read it all. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm honored to be here today to witness the signing of the sister city agreement between the two. And it says, Washington, D.C. and Rome make what could be described as a historic power couple. This is the government speaking. That both Rome and Washington are the seats of government and the location where influential world decisions are made. Therefore, some might say that in these cities, politics was, is, and always will be the sport of choice. Well, the Bible says that they will work together and the one will be an image of the other. Now, the beast and Rome and the image of the beast, Protestantism and Washington, they will work together. But America has a secular form of government separating church and state based on what came out of the French Revolution. But the Bible says the king of the north will overcome that mindset, and the kings will give their power unto the beast, and they will once again legislate morality. Whose morality will they legislate? The New York Times, Vatican calls for global oversight of the economy. The Vatican called on Monday for an overhaul of the world's financial systems and once again proposed the establishment of a supranational authority to oversee the global economy, saying it was needed to bring more democratic and ethical principles to a marketplace run amok. In a report issued by the Pontifical Council for Justice and Peace, the Vatican argued that politics, which is responsible for the common good, must be given primacy over the economy and finance, and that existing multinational institutions like the International Monetary Fund had not been responding adequately to global economic problems. The document grows out of the Roman Catholic Church's concerns about economic instability and widening inequality of income and wealth around the world, issues that transcend the power of national government to address on their own. The time has come to conceive of institutions with universal competence. Now that the vital goods shared by the entire human family are at stake, goods which the individual states cannot promote and protect by themselves, Cardinal so-and-so, the president of the council, said he presented, that is what pushed us. The language in the document which the Vatican refers to as a note is distinctively strong. We should not be afraid to propose new ideas, even if they might destabilize pre-existing balances of power that prevail over the weakest. We will change this world. The document states in its conclusion, the message prompted comparisons for the rallying cries of protests of movements that have been challenging the financial order, like the indignados. Have you heard of the indignados? The indignant ones, the disenfranchised humanity. Who's behind the indignados? In Madrid, and the Occupy Wall Street protesters in New York City, who's behind them? Still, Vatican officials said the document was not a manifesto for disaffected dissidents. And then it says, the document proposes ideas that seem to be in line with those proposed by the indignados. Okay, Rome. So your mindset is the same as that of the indignados. I wonder whether you are perhaps helping the indignados to obtain their mindset. But really we're in line with the magisterium of the church, said Bishop Mario Torso. I like this. Though the Pope was not involved in the drafting of the document released on Monday, the Holy Father and the Holy See are following these matters with particular concern, said Cardinal Turkson, adding that the Pope was constantly calling not just for joint action, but for examination of every facet of the problem, social, economic, cultural, spiritual. He wants to control the whole gambit. Referring to the group of 20 leading economists, the Cardinal noted that the document was timed to make a contribution which might be useful to the deliberation of the G20 meeting next week, but it is also directed to the entire world. So the Pope says, I want to be the new moral order. It's highly critical of economic liberalism that spurns rules and controls. He's a control freak. Did you know that? Free and stable markets regulated by an appropriate legal framework and working towards sustainable development and social progress for everyone. Well, in order to achieve that, let's first dump the old one in the garbage bin. World economy. It's interesting that they put apocalypse now, this is the end, on the same poster in the newspaper. Let's have a look at who these people and organizations are that the Pope refers to. The indignados, the outraged. This is part of the 2008 to 2012 Spanish crisis. And these pictures are from 2011 and 2012. That's right now. And this is what is happening in the world. This is Puerta del Sol Square in Madrid. Became a focal point and a symbol during the protests in the picture on 20 May. So the world is seeing revolt against the existing orders of the economy. Russian television talks about emacing approach, US police spray peaceful students. This is the Wall Street aspect. So you have chaos in Europe, you're starting to have chaos in the States. London riots, David Cameron to chair Cobra meeting, David Cameron to chair an emergency meeting in Downing Street. Later, the riots in London and other cities spiraled out of control. Mobs fought running battles with police in the capital. Where are these riots taking place? In some obscure countries or in the very heart of capitalism? London riots, 9 August 2011. Riots in Tottenham, North London. UK riots before and after images of the devastation, the BBC News. And then The Guardian reports that an Indignados film brings Occupy ideas to the big screen. So let the media help to rile up the world's population. The traditional way of depicting history on the big screen is to wait a while after something has happened before turning it into a film. But one of the most talked about premieres at the Berlin Film Festival depicts a chapter of the history book very much still being written. We are in the throes of a final conflict. Let's ask Wikipedia. I know it's an online one, but it'll give you a good idea of what these protests were about. The 2011-2012 Spanish protests, also referred to as the 15M movement. And I would like you to know that the powers behind the scenes in the Spanish world are very much controlled by Roman Catholic societies, who are often at the forefront of all these initiatives. And the indignance movements, the disenfranchised angry mob, are a series of ongoing demonstrations in Spain whose origins can be traced to social networks and real democracy now. So this is a call for real democracy. The protest started on 15 May in 58 Spanish cities. The series of protests demand radical change in politics, economics, etc. The time of outrage, and it refers to Greece, Portugal, Iceland, and regional conflicts. And even though the protests form a heterogeneous and ambiguous group, they share a strong rejection of the unemployment, welfare, two-party systems, socialist workers' party, people party, political systems, capitalism, political corruption. People are fed up with everything that's going on in this world. And they're ready to pick up arms. Here is an article in the Daily Bell. Spain bans cash transactions over 2,500 euros. It has outlawed the use of cash in business transactions in a effort to curtail tax losses. So we're moving towards a totally new society. And Europe is in turmoil. Now, I found this article so fascinating. Did you know that the stones are crying out and God's people are fast asleep? RussianTelevision.com brought an article by a writer on political analysis. And he asks this interesting question. Does the European Union have an expiry date? And then he writes, a veritable re-engineering of the entire planet has been taking place in front of our eyes for many decades now. Now I'm going to read this article in some detail so that we can see that this is not some airy-fairy idea. This is something that political analysts who have been watching the scene, and please note, without the hindsight of Bible knowledge, and what they can put together while God's people are sleeping. So there's been a re-engineering. However, since it is gradual, most people do not notice or understand what is happening, just like the proverbial frog that is thrown in the boiling water. We don't see what is happening. What goes under the name of New World Order, globalization, or my favorite, world government, describes the long-term objectives of a highly powerful global power elite embedded inside every country, notably the US and Europe, that owns, operates, channels every country's resources: oil, finance, economic strength, military prowess, natural resources, from inside to promote their supranational agenda. The highly complex, holistic, and extensively planned process helps explain much, if not all, of the ongoing violence, chaos, injustice we see in the realms of finance, politics, and the economy. But good strategic planning also requires experimentation, trial and error, scenario building, and war games. And then he talks about his native country, Argentina, where they practiced this and where they crashed the banks and everybody lost everything they had. Please note that the average citizen of the United States in 1 year has lost 40% of his wealth. So there was this experimentation. And the banking cartels aligned to the IMF and the World Bank and the US Treasury Department and the qualified mainstream media worked together to collapse Argentine's financial and monetary system, but managed to save all their banks that operated in the country. So somebody is doing something behind the scenes. They saw their money gone, just like in the States now. The result for Argentina, GDP fell by 40%. In 2002, 50% of our population fell below the poverty line. Same happening now in the United States. Same happening now in all of Europe. And he goes on and he talks about the full-fledged social war that stopped just short of civil war, and yet not one single bank folded. If we fast forward to Greece, Ireland, Italy, Spain, the US, UK, Portugal, Iceland today, we see the same scene over and over again. Clearly not mistakes, made by specific governments, but a veritable model designed to control whole nations, imposing unnecessary and fraudulent public debts. One of the key lessons they learned in Argentina was how to control we, the people. Control freaks. Through war, psychological warfare. You're so afraid. Are you going to be blown up by a terrorist? And they show you all the things that they plan, and you need scanners so that later, like a robot, you just do what you are told. War. That you will accept any legislation without thinking, as long as you can have peace and quiet. Exerted by controlled media so that the population ends up accepting all hardship, whilst the banker and the government perpetrators get to keep all the money and stay in power. I wonder whether the European Union might not be a similar experiment, but on a much vaster and grander scale. An experiment on how to bring very different countries with very different languages, legal system, cultures, histories of war and hatred among them, all under a straitjacket of bureaucratic union that increasingly sweeps away national sovereignties. A sort of how-to on promoting voluntary submission, to accept a legal bureaucracy, one parliament, one unelected president, one military force, one flag, one currency. What lessons are globalists learning from the troubles of the EU? Are today's growing EU woes a reflection of the fact that after more than half a century of Euro building, we now see the controlled demolition of the EU in order to rebuild it into something new? Perhaps molding it into something closer to their heart's desire, as the old 19th century British Fabian Society urging gradual socialist world government once envisioned? Is the EU an intermediate stage on the hard road to world government, suggested by Council on Foreign Relations member Richard Gardner in a seminal in 1974, Foreign Affairs, a stage in which legal, political, trade, financial, social, cultural, media, monetary, military, and many, many, many more complexities have been ironed out, redesigned, retooled to serve a greater purpose? I like this man's insight. Will we soon see the breakup of the euro not as an unfortunate accident, but as a planned mega process, which together with hyperinflated US dollar will be allowed to tailspin into a controlled collapse, only to be replaced by a new global currency issued and managed by the global power elite? Does the EU have an expiry date? And then listen to this man. He doesn't even know the Bible. The Vatican, always well informed, seems to think so, as we see from their recent call for revamped global institutions, a sure sign that the old men who walk the Vatican corridors are again reserving their place under the coming sun. This is incredible. Stone, you're doing a great job. The controlled collapse of the euro through its breakup and the US dollar through inflation, coupled with a suitable engineered version of Arab Spring for Europe, the US and others, that further erodes national sovereignties on a planetary scale, fueled by controlled sequential wars and supported by increasing war emanating from Western media monopolies. All just one big mistake, or merely different views of the same planetary leviathan bent on imposing world government upon us all? Written by Adrian Salbuki for RussianTelevision.com. Brilliant. Brilliant. The Arab awakening. Oh, do we have to be afraid of the Muslim world? Or who's engineering these events? It's not just happening in the Arab world, it's happening in Europe. It's happening in your backyard. It's going to come here. Stormwatch, I'm not going to read his whole article, but it's the same writer for Russian thing. He says Arab Springs are not spontaneous, as the Western mainstream media would have us believe. They're behind-the-scenes instigators, always get a little help from their global power elite mega planning friends. So there's a power behind this. we are seeing the king of the north overrunning the secular mindset of the king of the south. The more lucid and aware see them all as mere puppets, subordinate to money power elites in one form or another. And as someone who studies the Bible, this church should be in the forefront of evaluating prophetic events. In fact, this is a whole new form of war, waging war based on psi-war. Modern war is waged by powerful nations on 5 different overlapping holistic levels of aggression against weaker, appetizing countries. Military invasion, military coup, as it happened in many of those countries, financial coup, political coup, social coup, you've got them in the bag. And they have to jump according to your dictates. He mentions Libya, macro-management by the global power elite is governed by their specific goals and interests in each country because they still need a strong US, a nuclear Israel, and a stable Germany. But they definitely do not want a strong Russia, China, nuclear Iran, stable Latin America, etc. This is this man's view. And here's another interesting article. It's a biography of Hassan al-Banna. And it talks about Western versus Islamic democracy. Now we're talking about mindsets. Before we were talking about how to. Let's talk about mindsets. The difference between Islamic democracy and Western democracy is, of course, the following. While the latter is based on the conception of the sovereignty of the people, the former is based on the principle of the caliphate by the people. In Western democracy, the people are sovereign. In Islam, sovereignty rests with God. And the people are his caliphs, or subjects. In the West, the people themselves make the law. In Islam, the people must follow and obey the laws that God communicated through his prophets. Now I want you to think about that. What if you could endure or induce a mindset of fear in the Western world, that this Islamic mindset could perhaps become the system of government even in the West? Where would you run to for help? Wouldn't you rather run with the principles of the perceived Christian world than with the principles of the perceived Islamic world? Surely you would. In one system, the government carries out the will of the people. In the other, the government and the people together must translate God's intentions into deeds. In short, Western democracy is a kind of absolute authority that exerts its power freely and in an uncontrolled manner, whereas Islamic democracy is subject to the divine law and exerts its authority in harmony with the commandments of God and with the framework established by God. So this Islamic democracy is already a religious mindset. It is a King of the North alliance because Babylon is a religious conglomerate, a new world religion. Times Online. Full text of Archbishop's lecture, Civil and Religious Law in England. This is the text of the Archbishop of Canterbury. This lecture will not attempt a detailed discussion of the nature of Sharia, which would be far beyond my competence. My aim is only, as I've said, to tease out some of the broader issues around the rights of religious groups within a secular state, with a few thoughts about what might be entailed in crafting a just and constructive relationship between Islamic law and the statutory law of the United Kingdom. This is brilliant! I can show you a picture of this very man kissing the ring of the Pope. There's no doubt where his allegiance lies. Why should he propose Sharia law or aspects of it in England, in the United Kingdom? Is it perhaps to so rile up the people that they say, no, rather give us Christian law? Rather give us Christian law and let's implement the mark of the beast before we accept this. The globalists and the Islamists fomenting a clash of civilizations. Robert Dreyfus summarizes the nation of the Muslim Brotherhood organization in a few paragraphs below. Now, isn't it fascinating that after all of these riots that we have in the Islamic world, and the new democracies that are now arising out of the dictatorships that have been swept away in a form of the French Revolution, that the new leaders that come forth, the new electors, come from the Islamic Brotherhood, that they are the most powerful power bloc? Who are they? The real Muslim brothers are those whose hands are never dirtied with the business of killing and burning. They are the secretive bankers and financiers who stand behind the curtain, the members of the old Arab, Turkish, Persian families whose genealogy places them in the elite, with smooth business and intelligence association to the European black nobility, and especially the British oligarchy. So, do they operate in these secret societies that have been set up behind the scenes, that have created the situation whereby they are now coming out of their secret hiding place to take their place in the sun and implement the new religious mindset in the world? The Muslim Brotherhood is money. Together the Brotherhood probably controls several tens of billions of dollars. But who controls the dollars? Who has control of the money? Who is the one that pulls the strings of all these societies? Let's look at the power behind the power. This is what we want to see. There is only one power that has its tentacles everywhere, and that can exercise control by placing its secret militia in strategic places, while it controls the front organizations from within. We have to find out who controls them all. And I believe this power is the papacy. It's the only one that fits the profile. It also fits the biblical profile. It is the antitype of the king of Tyre. It is the one who controls the economy. It is the one that has the purse strings. And its most powerful agents, together with numerous other papal orders, are the Knights of Malta, the Jesuits, and Opus Dei. Magnificently rich organizations. And together they control virtually every other secret society, political and military entities, as well as the New World Order political think tanks such as the CFR, the Trilateral Commission, the Bilderbergers, and many others. Now you will shout, conspiracy theory. Well, let's look at the facts and see whether these are perhaps not conjectures, but facts. The Knights of Malta. Here they are, the leaders in this field. There's the new Grand Master, and there is the Pope. He's the central figure. They are subject to him, and they are everywhere. Here is the present Grand Master. From Matthew Festing, he always has to be a royal. There he is in his regalia. Here he is with the Pope. There's with his cross of Malta. And there he is with the same regalia as was worn by Napoleon. Did you see that thing that he had on him? And the kings of Europe. And Adolf Hitler used that symbol on every single one of his aeroplanes. And it was the emblem of his highest orders that he gave to his military. The Knights of Malta, The CIA, nobody can deny that these are powerful organizations. The FBI, they control espionage and counter-espionage and all of these things in the entire world. Who formed the CIA? It was the Catholic Knight of Malta, William Wild Bill Donovan. A Knight of Malta is the first one to control and set up the CIA. From the beginning, they were in control. He was considered the father of the CIA. He was also the former head of the OSS before he was used to create the CIA. The FBI. Who formed the FBI? It was the powerful Roman Catholic who was also a Knight of Malta and a trustee of the Catholic University of America, Charles Joseph Bonaparte. Isn't it fascinating that these papal organizations control the most powerful organizations and institutions in the world? But we are just beginning. Opus Dei and Formation, the Way, a collection of 999 upside down 666. Religious maxims published by Escriva, the founder. Opus Dei affirms that true Christians must be disciplined and obedient to a spiritual director. Spiritual direction? We better get it into our church as well, so that you don't think for yourself anymore, but have someone who decides for you what you must think. Careful when they set themselves up as spiritual directors. This book, Their Kingdom Come, I labored through it. I read the entire thing, by Robert Hutchinson. Book description, as you will find it on the web pages, an explosive expose of one of the most powerful and secretive sects operating within the Roman Catholic Church, Opus Dei. This book reveals that Opus Dei has become the Catholic Church's paramount financial power, influences its members through a combination of secret rites and insistence on absolute obedience, uses a strategy of discretion to cloud its real intentions, and aims to prepare Christendom for the next crusade against Islam. He's got it wrong there. But that doesn't matter. He's got most of it just facts. Just facts. These people control the banks. They have so many front organizations. They control the flow of oil, even of hardware, military hardware, to terrorist organizations, including Islamic ones. So he claims in the book. Not me. So he claims. And then let's look at the Trilateral Commission. Pope John Paul II with the Trilateral Commission. There it is, this mighty think tank, and who stands in the middle? It is the Pope who controls these organizations. And the Jesuits, there sit the men in black, the electorate of the Jesuit order. Who sits in the front? The man in white, with them in their back. It is the Pope who controls these organizations, and we have to see what they are doing in the world. Where are their fingers in the pie? Louis F. Ware wrote many years ago, but today, incredible as it may seem, many Protestant preachers are now teaching that the God-inspired interpretations of prophecy so forcefully presented by the Reformers, and which were the bulwark of the great Protestant movement, are erroneous, and that hence the Reformers' untruthful exegesis of Scripture was the mainstay, the foundation of the great God-sent Reformation. How did this change come about? Who did it? The answer is clear and decisive: the Jesuits. So the Jesuits have changed the entire philosophy and prophetic interpretation of the entire Christian world, but they're toothless. They have no role to play. Excuse me, are our people asleep? The Trilateral Commission. This is their webpage, their official webpage. Please note their logo can be transcribed quite readily into a 666. Welcome to the website of the Trilateral Commission. The Commission was originally created in 1973 to bring together experienced leaders within the private sector to discuss issues of global concern at a time when communication and cooperation between Europe, North America, and Asia were lacking. It has grown since its early days to include members from more countries in these regions. And then they show the leaders today. Mario Monti is the European chair, Joseph Nye, the North American chair, Yataro Kobayashi, the Pacific Asian chair. Isn't this interesting? Have you seen this man lately? Where's he now? Trilateral Commission, Executive Committee, Mario Monti. There he is. Let's jump to page 5 of their web page. And who do we see here? Just fortunately, alphabetically, there he is, Mario Monti, President, Bocconi University, Milan, former member of the European Commission, Competition Policy, International Market, Honorary President, Bruegel, Brussels, European Chairman, Trilateral Commission. And down here we have Luca Papademos, Visiting Professor, Public Policy, Kennedy School of Government, Harvard University, Cambridge Senior Fellow, Center of Financial Study, Goethe University, Frankfurt. These are big people. And when the governments in Europe start collapsing, and they have to get their man to run the show, who becomes the Prime Minister of Italy, who becomes the Prime Minister of Greece, unelected, to set up the policies that suit the trilateralists that have the Pope in their center. Mario Monti runs Italy, and Lucas Papademos ran Greece. Who runs the show? In his book, With No Apologies, from the former conservative Republican Senator Barry Goldwater, he lambasted this discussion group, the Trilateralist group, by suggesting, now listen to what he said, it was a skillful, coordinated effort to seize control and consolidate the 4 centers of power: political, monetary, intellectual, and ecclesiastical. The creation of a worldwide economic power superior to the political governments of the nation states involved. He will come with chariots and with all those ships, and he will overrun the king of the south, the Bilderbergers. Welcome to Bilderberg. Ah, good day, Mitt Romney. What are you doing there on this picture? US News blogs. What is Bilderberg? What a Bilderberg it's been. Big names, big money. This is now 2012. Big decisions, big crowds, somewhere around 8,000 activists outside the gates, up from about a dozen in 2009. And insult, well, here's what we learned. This is just a blog. I'm not using this to back up my lecture. I'm just saying this is what the people say. The Washington Post saw Bill Gates come in, and I've got 3 eyewitnesses from inside who confirmed he was there. This is his ear. You won't see the names Mitt Romney or Bill Gates on the officially released final list of participants. By the way, that list reads like the who's who in the financial world. Because, well, the list is a nonsense. It's nothing like a complete list of people who attend Bilderberg. It's a smokescreen, a bit of a spin. So can we all please stop repeating it as gospel? There are a lot of CFR Bilderberg crossover. Honorary chairman of both is David Rockefeller. Co-chairman of the CFR is Rowan Ruman. He was here. And on the CFR board of directors are Ayamin and Henrik, both Bilderbergers. So all of these organizations, they all work together. But nobody in the public really understands Bilderberg. And is it a conspiracy to say that Rome controls it? We'll see. And then fascinating, they continue and say Kodmani was at Bilderberg in 2008. The last time it was here in Cantilli. She's a member of the European Council on Foreign Relations. Its parent group, the Council on Foreign Relations, is a sort of Uber-lobby group, a couple of rungs down from Bilderberg, but still hugely powerful. Now, what was he doing there? Basma Kodmani is also the executive director of the Arab Reform Initiative. So here is someone from the Arab Reform Initiative in this high think tank. This body set up in 2004, long before the riots, by the CFR, is helping to steer a comprehensive process of democratic reform in the region. In 2005, the Syrian National Council came into being, so they have already set up the new governments that don't even exist yet. Isn't this fascinating? And so according to its website, the SNC is a non-profit public policy research organization registered in the District of Columbia. So all these people come. Trittim und sein Bilderberg-Problem, Spiegel Online. Who's Trittim? He's one of the Green leaders of the Green Party in Europe. They claim not to be interested in world politics. They just want happy ecologies. What's he doing there? So the Spiegel took it up. It says about the Bilderbergers. Es ist ein vertraulicher Zirkel. This is a secret little circle of people. You don't talk about it. Once or twice a year, the deciders for what happens in the world today meet at this Bilderberg conference. And this year, even one of our greenies, the head of the Green Party, was there. And now he must please explain to his party friends what he did there. And then they talk a little about him. He talks about there were heads of governments, leaders of trade unions, organizations such as the World Bank, the World Trade Organization. And then they say, this is the most elevated circle of power in the world. This is the greatest circle of power in the world. It's a sort of informal, undemocratic world government. This is what Spiegel says. And Spiegel is the equivalent of Time magazine in North America. So there's a great deal of conspiratorial speculation about these secret societies, where truth and lies blend into homogeneity, and this suits the powers behind the scenes. They like it. They don't care. They keep it secret, and you see this one come and that one come. In the last meeting, Hillary Clinton was there, Obama was there. Ooh, the world gets excited. What are they planning? But they don't really know. They don't have the finger on the pulse. They don't know what these people are planning. They can speculate, but we can help them because we have prophecy on our side. They hide behind the well-known faces and use them as a mask to conceal their real agenda. The more varied the speculation, the better for them, because then they can dump them all in the conspiracy theory category and marginalize all challengers. That's what they do. They like it. Secret societies love to hang out their wares for public consumption. As long as nobody finds out who rules behind the scenes, they're perfectly happy. You can throw them all over like dominoes, whether you throw the bankers over, the Rockefellers over, the Zionists over, the Islamics over, the this over, they don't care, as long as you don't know who rules behind the scenes. We're going to do a little bit of research in these lectures. And we will find out from the best sources, from the horse's mouth, who created these organizations that run the world. Daniel 12 verse 10, many shall be purified and made white and tried, but the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand. But the wise shall understand. Those who do wickedly against the covenant he shall corrupt with flattery. But the people who know their God shall be strong and carry out great exploits. We do not have to be ignorant. We do not have to be the last to find out what's happening in the world. We are on the very verge of the final conflict. And the world needs to be warned. And if we don't do it, who's going to do it? Now in the next part, we will continue and we will hone in on an organization like the Bilderbergers, and we will hone in on the events of our time, and we will see who the real instigator is. May God help us in that process. Thank you.